Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is June 14th, 2018. We are recording and broadcasting to Facebook Live here in our studio, our Open Stories Foundation / Mormon Stories podcast studio in Salt Lake City, Utah. We are really excited for all the good things that are happening across the globe in Mormon Stories land and Mormon Stories podcast. And we are really, really excited today to have with us another singer-songwriter. So we have been featuring, we have a history of featuring singer-songwriters here and there in our 13-year history. But today we have Sarah Sample. Some of you will know of Sarah Sample's work. If my memory is correct, she has 6 albums out. You can check her out on Spotify. Some of you have heard of the Lower Lights, which is a musical performance group that has performed in Utah, in and out of Utah for many, many years. It's a great group, but Sarah's been performing with them for a long time. But she has had a solo career ever since her days as a undergraduate at Utah State University. Again, she has 6 albums, but she is currently promoting her 6th album, and it's called Redwing, and it is inspired by her faith journey and her journey specifically out of Mormonism. And we have been using it as a bumper on Mormon Stories. So if you've heard that song "Love Who You Love," that is one of the songs that is just amazing. But they're all amazing. So I had lunch with Sarah. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. We were talking about it, and we had this idea that instead of doing what we did with Angela Soph, which was to sort of tell her story and then have her perform, it's always been my dream to have a singer-songwriter where we do an interview, but we kind of sprinkle songs along the way in the interview instead of have it be blocked out. So what's cool about this interview is Sarah's in it. And then secondly, she's debuting her new album. And thirdly, we're broadcasting it live. And fourthly, it's the first time we're going to have her tell her journey sprinkled with her songs throughout. We're grateful for everyone who's able to join us here live in the studio. We actually have, we're going to, by the time everyone joins us, we'll have about 10 people here in the studio, which is really fun. If you ever want to be part of one of our live studio recordings, let us know. We do that here in Salt Lake every once in a while. But we're also very grateful for everyone joining us on Facebook Live. We will be taking your questions and comments. So please tune in and share your comments and questions with us, and we'll share. We have just a few really quick announcements. We have been holding these workshops and retreats for the past 2.5 years. And they have been really transformative for so many people. That's why we do it. It's not like we need more stuff to do. We've got plenty to do. But there are people struggling with their anxiety and depression over their faith crisis. There are people whose marriages are in jeopardy. There are people who are struggling communicating with believing family and friends. Maybe they're closeted in a box, not able to come out in an authentic way. Maybe they're scared that they'll lose loved ones or friends or even a job. And these people need support. So we do workshops and retreats all over the country to support these sorts of people. And so I'm just going to tell you really quickly where the upcoming ones are. We just had an amazing retreat in Park City. We will be coming to Houston. We'll be coming to my hometown, Houston, Texas, July 13th through 15th. Sam Young will be sponsoring us, and it's going to be a great time. We're coming to Idaho Falls, August 10th through 11th. Portland, Oregon is a newer announced event. That will be August 17th through 18th. Really excited about that. A great group has signed up. In September, we're doing something really special. We think it's going to come off. We are going to travel to Sweden, and we're going to, Jeremy Runnels may join us, and we're going to be visiting Hans Mattsson and Birgitta Mattsson. There's been a lot of cool things going on in Sweden over the years. We as Mormons and post-Mormons and liberal Mormons owe a lot to the Swedish saints who have helped lead the effort of sort of awakening intellectually and emotionally, calling the church to account. And of course, Hans Matson, former Area Authority 70, who's been on Mormon Stories podcast, who's been covered in the New York Times. He's come out with a new memoir about his own faith journey. It's been released in Swedish already, but he's got an English version that he's going to be releasing. So we hope to travel to Sweden. Hopefully Jeremy will join us. We hope to promote Hans Matson's book. We hope to interview him live on video so that we can, for the first time, have Hans's story captured in video form like we just did with Michael Coe just a month or two ago. Really cool. We hope to have what we call a Swedish rescue, where we are going to, just me, Jeremy, Hans, Brigitta, maybe some other cool people, meet with Swedish liberal, progressive, post-Mormons and just minister to them in our own way. And they'll minister to us and educate us, and it'll be just fun. We also are planning a little workshop in Switzerland just that next weekend. It's in mid to late September. I don't have the dates handy, but that's coming. So if any of you want to just kind of travel with a bunch of us to Sweden and then Switzerland, or either have some fun, meet some cool European progressive and post-Mormons, we'd love to have you join us and see Sweden, see Switzerland. I'm actually part Swedish. I'm more Scandinavian than I am English, it turns out. Delin is a Swedish name, so I'm excited to go back to my homeland. We're having the Mormon Stories Bahamas Cruise, October 24th to 28th. And then Sacramento is our newest event that we'll be doing November 2nd through 3rd. We're super excited for Sacramento. That's also a great group. So that is the announcements that we have for today. Now it's time to get back to the main reason we're doing this interview. Sarah Sample, it has been so lovely to get to know you over the past few days.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So you came all the way from Wyoming, is that right?
Yes. My husband and I moved to Wyoming with our kids 4 years ago. So we live in northern Wyoming, a little town called Sheridan.
But you spent some of your upbringing in Salt Lake City and some college here, so you know the territory.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you just introduce yourself to our audience? We're going to go in depth, of course, but for those who don't know anything about you, you're a award-winning singer-songwriter. Tell us just a bit about yourself to kind of tease the audience as to how cool this experience is that they're about to have with Sarah Sample.
Yeah, I've known from when I was really little that I wanted to be a songwriter, to be a singer. And my dad was a vinyl record collector, and we listened to a lot of different music growing up, everything from like Aretha Franklin to classical to Lyle Lovett, on and on. And I fell in love with songwriting. And so...
were you disappointed when Lyle Lovett broke up with Julia Roberts? I think that's an important question. You weren't disappointed?
No.
You were okay
I love
with that.
Julia Roberts, but...
Margie was heartbroken.
It didn't shake me.
For Margie, that was the couple made in heaven.
Oh, yeah.
But for you, it was just... You wanted him for... No.
I just wanted him for his music.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started writing songs pretty early on. I started writing songs in like 5th and 6th grade, and then played music all through high school and college, and started making records when I was in college. I originally traveled around. My family moved a lot when I was little. I was born in Logan, actually, and we lived in Houston, and we lived in Georgia, and then we moved to Santa Barbara, California when I was 7. And I call Santa Barbara home. That's really where I grew up mostly. And then when I turned about 17, my mom got a job here in Salt Lake. So we moved to Salt Lake. My older 2 siblings had already moved on. They were done with high school and in college. And I moved with my mom and my little brother to Salt Lake, and then went to Utah State. So that's where I started touring and making records. And I've just continued doing that the last 15 years. And
when you say award-winning singer-songwriter, what types of awards?
So I play what I call folk music or singer-songwriter music. So the awards that I've won are like multiple songwriting contests, the Folks Fest songwriting contest in Colorado, Merle Fest songwriting contest. I did a lullaby record with my good friend Edie Carey in 2014, and we won a bunch of awards for that. The Parents' Choice Awards, the 14th annual International Independent Music Awards.
Lots of cool awards.
Lots of cool stuff.
You've probably performed in festivals with names that, or rubbed shoulders with names of people we know, like who?
Yeah, like I went.
I'm a huge fan of David Wilcox. He's a singer-songwriter that took over my life for about 7 years. She's actually like had lunch with David Wilcox. They like hung out. They sang songs together. And I was super impressed.
Yeah, I love David Wilcox.
And he's not Mormon in any way. He's
No.
just a really kind of, in my circles, famous singer-songwriter.
The festivals are the funnest ones because you get to mingle and rub shoulders with kind of your heroes and people like that. There's a really fun music cruise, if anyone loves that type of music, called K-Amo. And it'll have people like, when I was on it playing one year, there was Emmylou Harris and Brandi Carlile and Patty Griffin and just really incredible people, Buddy Miller, and it's so fun.
And you have tattoos. I mean, we have to say that right at the outset. So
watch out.
Watch out. I'm a little nervous, but we're going to do it anyway.
It's getting dangerous in here already.
All right. Well, I thought it'd be super fun to mix the music into your interview. So what do you say?
Yeah, I'm totally up for that. I think that is what I love about playing folk music, is that you tell the story of people. So my album is mostly telling my story, and I love it.
All right. Well, let's get into your story.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So do you have the pioneer heritage or not so much?
Yeah. Okay. So on my mom's side, like true pioneer stock. Her parents have farms in central Utah, like around Spring City and Moroni, and raise turkeys and cows and things like that. My dad's side of the family is no Mormon stock. They were converts to the church when my dad was in high school. So my parents met at BYU. My dad served a mission. They got married in the temple when he got back. And then they started having us. My dad went to law school at the University of Utah and then decided to leave the Mormon church. And my parents still stayed together for a long time, but eventually my dad and mom were divorced and my dad moved back to Texas.
When he left, did he ever tell you why? Were you too young to even have that conversation?
I was in third grade when it happened. And no, but I think also as a child, you sense, like, children are really intuitive and smart. And I think they sense when something's not right, you know? So I think that had been brewing for a really long time. And, but it's interesting. And maybe I'll play a song in just a second about their divorce, because for a long time, I think that I looked at my dad and felt a lot of anger, you know, about that he left to move back to Texas. And I wanted to write a song that was about what it felt like as a child to go through your parents being split up. And then once I left Mormonism, I all of a sudden had this new compassion for my dad that I don't know that I had experienced before. And I think that when you go through a transition where you were someone and now you are not that person anymore, and kind of the fundamentals of what you believe have changed, that you really have two choices in a marriage, which is you just pretend nothing has changed. And I don't know how long like that is sustainable, or you say like, this is the new me, and should we work through this, or should we, I don't know, like you expose your true self, or you split up. And I think that happens a lot. So maybe I'll play that song. This is a song I started writing, again, from the perspective of my life, of my parents being split up. And then it just got really interesting when I changed the perspective to his life. So this is called Love Ain't Enough Anymore. I don't look at the pictures hanging in our hall, 'cause they all tell a story of when we had it all. Just kids out of college on a little church lawn, and I can't tell you when or how it went wrong. I thought it'd be better this way, pretending that nothing had changed. What is a life when you're living a lie? What is a life when you can't change your mind? When you're bound to the old you, you're waging a war. Honey, I love you, but love ain't enough anymore. Well, I tried to tell you, but I lost all the words. I hated to show you, 'cause I knew it would hurt. I couldn't be like you, a constant bright star, 'cause burning out trying leaves you lost in the dark. What is a life when you're living a lie? What is a life when you can't change your mind? When you're bound to the old you, you're waging a war. Honey, I love you, but love ain't enough anymore. I thought it'd be better this way, but I know now it can't stay the same. What is a life when you're living a lie? What is a life when you can't change your mind? When you're bound to the old you, you're waging a war. Honey, I love you. Honey, I love you, but love ain't enough anymore. Anymore. Thanks. Thank you.
So true, so good.
Thank
You
you.
have this choice of like hiding what you feel and hiding who you are and what you think, and kind of living that agreement that you made with yourself or with your family or with your spouse, or trying to be authentic, but sometimes that crumbles the foundation that you and everyone else have built their lives on.
Right. So somebody told me that when you leave your faith, you find yourself. And I think my transition, at least from leaving Mormonism, is all about self-discovery and about really holding everything up to the light and asking, well, do I think this, or do I agree with this? And rebuilding a foundation for a belief, your beliefs in the world and how you're going to live. And I think that would be so hard to realize that you don't hold the same values that you used to hold with your spouse. I think that's a really difficult place to find yourself in. And I think it is easy for a long time to say, well, I'm just not going to show you this. I think that feels easier initially, but I think it can be pretty suffocating to feel alone in a marriage like that. I feel really lucky that my husband and I left together, which certainly I think there are challenges no matter how you like spin it. But
yeah, you say it's like being at war with yourself to have one public face and then kind of your private self. It's like being at war with yourself. And
it's interesting because my dad never talked about why he left Mormonism.
Even now, you don't know?
No. Well, I think what's interesting is at the time, and I lived from third grade when he left through my marriage, like years of being married, where I had never once asked, why did you leave?
Right.
Isn't that bizarre?
Totally bizarre.
Like that question never felt important to me. I had my own ideas of why he left. And so I think, and that's also been really fascinating for me. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but nobody wants to talk to me about why I've left.
We call it the cricket effect.
But I think it's such an interesting topic. Yeah. Like it's fascinating to talk about, and nobody wants to talk about it, which I think is really sad because I feel like it's, I don't know, a really great conversation, and I feel like if people would ask me, then they would know me so much better.
Did your dad ever tell you why he left? Like, do you know now?
Yeah. So my dad is a super smart human being, like just really brilliant mind, and reads all the time, nonstop, and only nonfiction, like loves history, loves everything. And I think when, I don't remember exactly when it was, we were living in Boise. We were still in the church, and we went out to dinner, and we asked, why did you leave the church? And he said, I'll paraphrase, but basically in one sentence, he just said, I believe that Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon. Like it was not.
And what year did he decide this, do you think, approximately?
Oh, I think pretty soon after they were married, maybe a year in.
Like in the 90s, would this have been?
No, this would have been in the 80s.
80s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think he had discovered, he didn't believe that Joseph Smith wrote, he didn't believe it was divine, intervention that Joseph Smith had written the Book of Mormon. And that's all he said. That was the whole dinner conversation, was just, I just don't think Joseph Smith, that was an inspired text. And that was it. And kind of you understand, like, well, if you don't have that.
Yeah.
When
Gordon B. Hinckley says the Book of Mormon is the cornerstone of the church, it kind of is. It's kind of, right. Everything falls if the Book of Mormon isn't what it claims to be. So
well, and my husband and I experienced that too, and I don't want to jump ahead.
No. We'll get to that.
Okay.
We do have some listeners who are joining in. I just want to share some of the things shared so far. Lisa writes, leaving your faith puts you through a struggle of self-identity, but it helps you seek out the world that resides around you to realize there's so much more out there, a bigger purpose and meaning to this thing called life. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing. Jenny writes, nailed it, sister, with a little heart. I assume that's not your real sister, Jenny Diggins Way. That's just
it's one of my best friends.
Well, really?
Yeah.
So shout out to Jenny. And Anne writes, beautiful. Rachel writes, quote, what is a life when you're living a lie? So powerful. So, and Rachel also writes, OMG, covered in chills. 4 hearts and then a beautiful with 12 exclamation points.
I love you, Rachel.
Rachel writes like I do. Carla says hi from Star Valley, Wyoming. So you're not the only Wyomingan. What's someone from Wyoming called?
Rad.
Amelia writes, I used to watch her perform at USU. So one of your old USU fans. Hey, Amelia. And Jenny writes, hey, Sarah. Jenny Wentworth.
Yay.
All right. Jenny. Oh, and Par is joining us from Sweden. Par writes, heathen from Sweden. So Ooh. It's fun to have people joining us from all over.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
N.A. Johnson from Casper, Wyoming. Sarah's from El Paso. Melissa from St. George. All right, well, let's get back to your story. So your dad leaves when you're how old?
So my parents are divorced when I'm in third grade, and he moves back to Austin.
So around 8 years old.
So my mom is like on her own in Santa Barbara with us.
And was she like destroyed? Was she like totally like unsinkable Molly Brown? What was that like? Or do you remember? Did you even know?
She was so amazing. My mom is my favorite human on earth. She's just this resilient, incredible woman. And I remember her trying to take us to multiple therapy sessions. And like we'd try a therapist and it wouldn't work out, and then we'd try another therapist. And I have a funny memory of her like pulling up to the new therapist and my older brother jumping out of the car and just like beelining for the woods. Like, I'm not going in. And kind of as a single mom, like, what are you going to do? You can't drag him in, you know? So I think she was up against a lot. So yeah, I have a lot of love and respect for my mom. I think she was always doing the best she could. And I think that the gift that she gave to all of us is like a true unconditional love, which appears again and again in this story, is her consistency in my life. So.
Okay, so growing up without your biological dad, how did that progress? What happened next?
So we saw my dad a few times a year and would spend the summers with him in Austin for part of the time. And I will say that one thing I loved about the church was we did have a home teacher. And our home teacher was this sweet old 80-year-old cowboy named Ro McMullen, who he drove a VW Bug and was just like the coolest guy on the planet Earth and really took care of us. He took me to my first daddy-daughter dance because my dad wasn't there. And actually, I have a song about it if you want to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we're here for.
So...
Now, was this on Redwing?
It was on Redwing.
Was the last one on Redwing too?
Yes.
Okay.
That song, actually, I wanted to say I wrote with my friend Dustin Christensen. He's a Nashville songwriter. He's incredible. Please check him out.
I love that song.
Thank you.
That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that hooks you right there.
So this song I wrote with my sister, who her name is Kate Graves. She's also a singer-songwriter. She still lives in Santa Barbara. And I had the idea for the song because my daughter, June, who's now 10, was going to her first daddy-daughter dance. Do they do that here in Utah? Daddy-daughter dance? And so she was picking a dress and she just was glowy and excited to go spend a night with dad. But it also wasn't that big of a deal to her, right? Because she sees her dad every day and she gets to camp and hike and have him at dinner. And so I was so emotional about it, and it brought up so many, I don't know, like vulnerabilities in my mind because she didn't think it was a big deal. And that was the gift of it, is that it wasn't that special that she got to go like do something with dad. But for me, I remember like Ro McMullen pulling up with his like orange VW Bug, and he brought a corsage, and like I have a little Polaroid of us at the dance with like crepe paper behind us. And
was he like a home teacher kind of?
Yeah, he was my home teacher.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were how old?
Like 9, you know.
I'm not sure that would fly today.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would. He was just like such an old, cute cowboy.
He was, yeah.
He was just amazing. So my sister and I had the idea of this song, and we... You know, songwriting, some people ask, like, what's the process and how does it work? And honestly, every song is just really different. There isn't one way that it works for me. But this song, some songs take a year to write, and I'll play one of those later. But this song landed almost complete. I sat down on the couch with the guitar, and the chorus and melody and words all came like the first time around. And I called my sister and said, it's happening. Like, can you write right now? And she said, yeah. And we sat down and we wrote the song in an hour, and we cried the entire time.
Wow.
It was emotional.
And the song's called
The Dance.
Off of Redwing, Sarah Sample's new album.
Yeah.
The Dance.
You come to town a few times a year. I marked a heart on my calendar for the day you're getting here. I had it planned, a big surprise. Mom said you'd pick me up at 6. I'm still waiting here at 9. But I can't see it all in my mind. I'd be twirling in your arms, I'd be flying, and I would feel your love with every glance. That's how it's supposed to go at the daddy-daughter dance. My wedding day, guess sit and smile, and you're finally by my side to walk me down the aisle. We celebrate, and they start our song, but you're too boozed up to walk. You've been drinking all day long. But I can't see it all in my mind. I'd be twirling in your arms, I'd be flying, and I would feel your love with every glance. That's how it's supposed to go for the daddy-daughter dance. We never got our song, we never learned the moves, we never got to dance around with me standing on your shoes. I thought I was to blame till I finally figured out I could choose a different partner. I could fill my dance card out. Well, he's home at 5 for dinner time, and he coaches all her softball games and tucks her in at night. She picks her dress, it's pink chiffon. When she walks down those stairs, I watch him pin the corsage on. And I can't see it all in my mind. She'll be twirling in his arms, she'll be flying. She will feel his love with every glance. That's how it's supposed to go at the daddy-daughter dance. Pretty sad.
So those first two verses are a little sad.
Yeah.
What? So what?
Okay, I have to say.
Yeah.
Like, I really love my dad.
Yeah.
This is a really hard song for me to sing every night. And my dad wasn't drunk at my wedding.
I figured.
But my dad also didn't live near me. So we missed a lot. And I think it is a sorrowful thing in my life to not have that as a kid. I'm not gonna start crying. So I'm so grateful for my husband and for his presence and availability to me and to my children. I feel like that's been a really miraculous, if that's the word, part of the story for me.
So it's kind of about how you can have some of those hard relationships or hard experiences, but you can have other ones that maybe are healing and that are corrective in a sense, right?
Right. I mean, just the fact that the story can change. And I think that's what we're talking about today, is that our stories change, and we're going to change as people. And, you know, I've had the experience of thinking that I was so right about something, like I was sure of it, and then having the experience of being wrong. And I wish that experience for everybody I know, the experience of being sure of something in your life and losing that and having to start over because it changes you. And I think the process of my father leaving the church and leaving, you know, Santa Barbara to move to Austin definitely changed him and changed us. And my dad, I think, is a much better grandfather than a father and is, you know, very present in my life and in my kids' life now. And I'm grateful for that. But I do feel like the job of a songwriter is to tell the story.
Not just the fun ones.
Not just the fun ones. Yeah. Actually, more important to tell the hard ones.
Delane writes, I have been on the other side of this, going through a nasty divorce, and was disinvited to take my daughter due to the ugliness that ensues between parents. Broke my heart, just like this song did. Frowny face. So sad kids so often become the weapons of divorcing parents. Sending our love to you, Delane. Jenny writes, it's a mother's dream to give your children what you didn't get to experience. I think that's a huge part of the emotional pull of this song. Is you're hoping your daughters maybe get a better experience than what you got.
Right. And they don't have to carry the weight of it. I mean, I think that's part of it too, is you get to have your dad in your everyday life, and you don't have to know that that's special. That can be normal for you. And that's the gift of it.
Still, it's got to be hard as a parent if a kid, which they will always do, not always appreciate everything they have.
Yeah.
For you to not go, you don't understand how lucky you are to have a dad in your life, you know, because if your daughters are anything like most daughters, sometimes they won't always be grateful for. Right.
They're not teenagers yet.
What are you laughing at over there?
They still think I'm cool. They still love mom. So
it's the tats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, so beautiful, and my parents got divorced when I was in 7th grade, and I had something very similar. For us, it was the father-son campout, and my home teacher took me to the father-son's campout.
Yeah,
and
do you remember it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Brother Connors. He was an organ player for the Houston Astros, and it was special and totally bittersweet because I loved going to the father-son's campouts with my dad. Yeah. And then dad's not there.
Yeah. You know, it's heartbreaking stuff. It's complicated. It's a complex thing. And one thing that I feel really grateful for both my parents is that neither of my parents, after being divorced, said anything bad about each other. They were both very, very respectful of one another.
That's great.
So I feel really lucky in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what happens next in your story?
Okay. So let's see. Well, I think, and we talked a little bit about this at lunch, but I think that there are some things in growing up as a Mormon person, especially in Santa Barbara. It was before Prop 8, but I do remember that there were some lobbying against gay marriage.
I remember it as Prop 22 around 98, 99.
2000, something in those years. And I remember being really upset that they were asking members in the church to go door to door or to push this agenda. And I had gay friends in high school. And I remember asking my mom, like, what is this about? And I don't agree with this. And that's kind of where it ended. So then I moved to Salt Lake. I get really invested in the church when I'm 17. I get my Patriarchal Blessing. I'm on seminary council. I just jump in. Moved to Logan, and that's where I meet my husband, James, at Utah State. We get married in 2003 and finished school together there. We were married in the temple in Salt Lake. And
really quick, what made you jump into Mormonism? Were you vulnerable? Did you have fears, insecurities, doubts? Was it just, it painted a beautiful picture for you? Like what? Can you remember what was so appealing about it for you? Because I get a sense pre-Salt Lake, you weren't as into it as you became once you're at East High School.
I don't know if it was just that my social group changed, and so it was like what everyone was doing.
Well, okay.
So I remember going to my bishop at the time. Well, when I first moved here, I was still kind of partying, and I wasn't really involved in the church. And the bishop in my neighborhood, who I love dearly, he called me into his office and said something along the lines of like, hey, if you can stop partying for 3 months, then I think you should get your patriarchal blessing, and I think it'll be this important thing. And I thought that a patriarchal blessing sounded really cool. Like I wanted to do that. And so I changed. That was like a shift in the road where I moved from this kind of party crowd into this Mormon crowd for 3 months. And I had the experience of getting my patriarchal blessing, and it was so emotional. It was really powerful. The patriarch, and I forget his name, but was just this incredible man who would cross-country ski or hike to the top of a mountain to pray over each person that he was going to like give the blessing to. And it was a powerful experience, and it changed me. And I thought, well, I want to do this. This sounds awesome. So,
what were some of the things said, if you remember? I remember a few of the things said in mine that were just like, oh my gosh. Do you remember what the things were that really moved you?
Yeah, there was a lot about music, and there was a lot about like there will be no limit to your development and elevation in music. There was a lot about you're going to marry in the temple, and you're going to marry a returned missionary, and kind of how important it was to stay temple worthy. That was like over and over again. And I was pretty compulsive about worthiness. That concept of it became really important to me. And I had a laminated small copy made that fit in my scriptures. It was outlined, just like circled it and read it. And I really did use it as a map. I mean, I ended relationships over it because
Your patriarchal blessing.
Yes, yeah. Because it did not fit within the blessing,
Yeah.
So I meet James. He's just returned from a mission. He went to England on his mission, and he was raised in a Mormon family and never strayed in any way. And we fall in love, and he decides that he wants to go to medical school. And so he starts changing his major to pre-med, and we get married in the temple. And it was a beautiful day. But it was bittersweet too, because I had so many friends fly in from California and other places that couldn't be there. And my dad couldn't be there. And so I had a huge group waiting outside the temple. And then, of course, my mom got to go in and such. So we get married.
So your dad wasn't at the ceremony?
He was there.
But he wasn't in the temple?
No. Wasn't in the temple. But we did a ring ceremony after the fact to kind of like, my dad walks me down the aisle. We exchange vows in front of everybody. So, I continue making records and writing music, and we move for a year to Austin, Texas.
Wait, I love the story of your first concert at Utah State.
Oh.
Something you told me really stuck with me. Do you mind telling that story?
Yeah, sure. So I was playing just coffee shops. I mean, I was writing songs.
Cafe Ibis. Shout out to Cafe Ibis.
Cafe Ibis.
In Logan, Utah.
My sister worked at Cafe Ibis. So it was a cool joint. But I didn't drink the coffee.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so I had a friend in town, and his name was Russ Dixon, and he was from this group called Colors that was like a really big Utah band. Yeah. And Russ and I became good friends, and he told me, he was like, I think you should do a big CD release concert. And I think we should do it at the Eccles Conference Center. And I said, well, how many people does that hold? And he said, well, it holds 400 people. 400 people? Like, I've only played to my sister and the barista next to her, for weeks, or like my roommates who come down to hear me play or something. And he said, well, the trick to becoming bigger is you have to act bigger before people will believe that you're like, be more famous than you really are, and people will believe it. So I was like, that's not true. He was like, no, it is true. He was like, if you build it as if you are deserving of that like attention and people should come, they will come. And I was really skeptical, but they did. So we spent a month like building these A-frames, painted, Sarah sample in concert. I put a band together. We went flyering dorm room to dorm room, every apartment building in Logan. We went on the radio, and I would bring donuts to the radio guys every Wednesday, and they'd let me play a few songs on the radio. And
that's Aggie Radio?
Yeah. No, it was like a local radio station. And
KVNU?
Don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So they let me come in, play a few songs that talk about the show. And so we start selling tickets, and like we sell out the theater.
400 people.
400 people.
Yeah.
And I was playing to like 2 people before that. And so, you know, Russ really taught me this valuable lesson that like if you have enough time and preparation and work, that you really can build a following and an audience that way. And so I started playing twice a year these big theater shows. We played the Eccles Theater downtown that holds like 900 people. We played the brand new theater up on campus. And it was awesome. It was really fun. So it taught me a lot about just like if you dream it, you can like work to make it happen. I think things are a little different. Like I wish we could build a wooden A-frame now to promote. But now you have to buy Facebook ads and tell your mom to bring all her friends. And now I'm back to 25 people. I don't know. So yeah, it was great. And that actually was a time when I was going to make my first record in 2003, and I was terrified. And back then, it was really hard to make a record. Right now, you all could make a record this afternoon. Like you could make it start to finish on your iPads, upload it to a distribution site, get it duplicated. I mean, you could do it all in a week. You could make a record and print it, and they would CDs at your house. But then, I mean, just to figure out how to get a barcode on a CD was like 4 steps, you know, and it was really expensive, and it was hard to figure out how to do it. And I remember my husband telling me one night, well, no one's going to make the Sarah sample record. So if you want the Sarah sample record to exist in the world, like you've got to do it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make it happen. So yeah, started making records, and we both worked like we were waiters in little restaurants, and we lived in a little apartment that cost $300 a month. And I don't know, we just had this simple, sweet life. We go to Austin, Texas for a year. My degree is in music therapy, so I work at the Center for Music Therapy in Austin, Texas. And I loved it. We worked with like spectrum disorders, developmental delays of adults and children. We had a few like city contracts working with different groups. And then we worked with Parkinson's disease, and we did gait training and things like that. And James put off medical school to be a phlebotomist for the year. And then
That's blood, right?
Yeah, blood draw.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Laramie for the first year of medical school, and then moved to Seattle for 3 years. In Seattle, that is when Prop 8 came around. And it was really hard for me to go through that. I remember we went to church one day, and we were part of quite a liberal group of Mormons in Seattle. But I came to church, and there was protesters lining the block in front of the church, protesting Prop 8. And I was heartbroken. I felt so sad, and I felt ashamed, and I didn't know what to do. So we walked in the building, and I cried through sacrament meeting. I just felt so heartbroken. And afterwards...
Were they protesting Mormons' involvement in Prop 8?
Yeah, I think they were protesting Mormons' involvement, but I bet there were a lot of Mormons there, you know, protesting Prop 8 too. I don't know. I kind of did the like embarrassed.
But they were mad at the church. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they were mad at the church.
And so you're going into your church with people lined up outside.
But I agree with them.
Right, yeah.
But I'm going into church.
Yeah.
And after a sacrament meeting, there was a girl in the ward who said, I told her that I disagreed, and that I felt that like gay marriage should be legal and that I didn't have any problem with it. And I remember her telling me, well, how do you justify going against a prophet of God? And I didn't like have an answer. So I felt ashamed and embarrassed, and I felt so sad that I wasn't brave enough to walk out and join them. I don't know if any of you went through some of that too.
And it's interesting because you weren't in California, you were in Washington, and Prop 8 was in California. So that struck such a nerve that it's spilling over into surrounding states, right?
Right. And we were in downtown Seattle. So, and then we moved to Boise for a year, and then we moved to Salt Lake for 3 years for my husband's residency at the University of Utah. And that is when the story gets interesting.
No, it's already been interesting. Let me just say one thing. You have a live performance tomorrow night, right?
Yes.
Tell everyone where and when, because I want to plug that while our audience is at its apex.
So I am playing with a full band tomorrow night at the Post Theater on the U of U campus. It's a small, sweet little theater, and it starts at 7:00. My friend Paul Jacobson, who's in my band but is also an incredible musician, is opening the show, and it's going to be dreamy, you guys. Just come. It's going to be great.
How do they buy tickets?
So you can just buy tickets at the door, or you can buy tickets online on my website, sarahsample.com.
Okay, and just a couple quick comments. Daniel's one of our super fans. I love Daniel. He was quoting you when you said, but I didn't drink the coffee at Cafe Ibis. And he says, that's too bad because the Highlander grog at Cafe Ibis is amazing. And Margie loves the Highlander grog. So Daniel, you and Margie agree. Anyway, Norma also writes regarding, I think, your dad being kept out of the temple. She writes, quote, pay to play intellect is so disturbing. I had to pay 3 months of back tithing to be able to witness my son's temple wedding. And Norma's connecting with your dad having to sit outside your wedding, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real quick, before we jump into the even more interesting parts, how did you deal with that cognitive dissonance of having all these LGBT friends, knowing that policy was wrong, seeing those people, those protesters, feeling like you really wished you were part of them, disagreeing with the church? How do you just soldier on from that? What was your coping mechanism to deal with the cognitive dissonance?
I don't think soldiering is the word. I would say limping on is a better description of how it felt. And also I will say that I'm a singer-songwriter. Like, there are so many amazing gay singer-songwriters that I had so many friends. And also living in Seattle, I had friends that were in gay relationships raising children. And so I was watching this Prop 8 thing go on and then seeing best friends raise beautiful children together and do it so gracefully, like way better than I was doing as a new parent.
Weren't you in a class or something and there were some lesbian moms involved?
I was in there's a group in Seattle called PEPS, and it's like a parent support group. So they match moms and babies in the same neighborhood, same age of babies. And it saved my life. I mean, I was such a wreck as a new mom. And the leader of the group, of our group, had a lesbian marriage and relationship, and they were raising 2 children together. She had one child, her partner had one child, and they were raising children, and they were incredible parents and resources to me. And so not only was I emotionally feeling that I don't agree with this, but I was seeing it. I mean, I was watching it in front of me play out. So actually, I have a song about that.
All right.
Should we do that?
Let's do it.
Okay. This is a song off the new record called Love Who You Love.
And this is the one we've used as a bumper, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the one you've used as a bumper. The perspective of the song is a grandmother talking to her granddaughter who is gay. Okay. Well, I once had a mother too. She said the things like mothers do. But mothers can be wrong sometimes. Like back in 1959, she said he was no good for me. She didn't say, but I could see her reasons fell on color lines. See, his skin was not the same as mine. It is simple, it isn't hard, and no rhyme or reason to a heart. Ain't no shoulda, coulda, woulda part. You just love who you love. You just love who you love. Love, love, love who you love. Well, I hear your mom's been down on you. I once came down hard on her too. Our mothers can be wrong sometimes. Oh, I hope she'll come around with time. Two girls can love as big and true as any man and woman do. Oh, love doesn't draw in color lines. No pink or blue, no black or white. Well, it is simple, it isn't hard, and no rhyme or reason to a heart. Ain't no shoulda, coulda, woulda part. You just love who you love. You just love who you love. Love, love, love who you love. You just love who you love. You just love who you love. Love, love, love who you love. You just love who you love. You just love who